I know it's early, girl, but I'm so glad you answered the phone because it's time to get into Bible study. Will you do a Bible study with me? Because chapter 20 in Matthew is so rich and we got to get into it. So starting off in chapter 20 in Matthew, we have the parable of the workers in the vineyard. And honestly, reading it from a worldly standpoint, I'm going to tell you how I got it. I always tell you, go back and read it for yourself because it's so important for you to understand God's word on your own. Like, you can sit up here and listen to anybody on the internet. You can go to church on Sunday, but your relationship with God is developed through reading his word. So make sure you get into your word and see what God's telling you. But let me tell you how I read chapter 20, verse 1 through 16, girl. Boom. I'm going to put it in today's time just because it makes it easier for me to understand. All right. So boom, you are at a hiring fair. Okay. You're at a job fair and you're there first thing in the morning. Okay. And they're hiring people on the spot. So you like, cool. I'm going to get there right at 8 a.m. when they open up. So you get there at 8 a.m., baby, right when they open up, and you get hired on the spot. So the boss tells you, go, listen, I want you to go over to the plant. You going to start working. It's 8 o'clock. Just go in there and clock in and start doing your shift. We're going to do a full day shift and I'm going to pay you, let's just say $50 for the day. I'm going to pay you $50 for the day. You like, cool. I'm so excited. I got this job. I'm about to go work. $50 for the day. You go to work. You killing it. You doing what you need to do all day. 9 o'clock comes. That same boss goes back to the job fair and he hires somebody else and says, you know what? Go ahead and go work. I'm going to pay you a full day's wages. We've already established that a full day's wages is $50. Now, the boss goes back to the job fair at noon and he sees some more people. And he's like, listen, go ahead. I got some work for you. Go ahead and go to the plant and I'm going to pay you a full day's wages. We all know full day's wages is $50. 3 o'clock comes. The boss does the same thing. He goes back to the job fair. He's like, listen, I'm going to hire you. Go ahead and go to work. I'm going to pay you a full day's wages. Then it comes again. It's 5 in the afternoon. The job ends at 6. And the boss goes back to the job fair. It's 5 o'clock. He got work to get done. So he's like, listen, I need some more people to help them out. It's 5 o'clock. You guys are here. You can head back over to the plant and I'm going to pay you a full day's wages. To me, the 5 o'clock people, they're only working an hour because remember the day ends at 6 o'clock. They get a full day's wages for working from 5 to 6. They are winning. But you arrived at the spot at 8 o'clock. You've been working from 8 to 6. You probably thinking when you about to get your check that, hey, I've been working 8 to 6. You know what I'm saying? They just been working an hour. I at least got to get more than $50 up to the boss. And you like, listen, hey, you know what I'm saying? I've been here all day. I noticed that you gave the people who just got here an hour ago $50, but why are you only giving me 50? I should be getting more. The boss says to you, the boss says, listen, I promised you 50 and I paid you what I owed you. But I should be able to do what I need to do with my finances, with my money, right? First, reading this story, this parable that Jesus gives the disciples, I immediately look at it like, but wait, God, because honestly, I feel like they are gypped. Like the people who came in here at 8, 9, 12, 3, they're gypped. Like, that's not fair. Why are you only giving them 50 and they've been working their tails off all day? And what you have to understand is that when Jesus gives parables, it's not necessarily about what he's talking about, but it's about the context of things. So when Jesus is talking about the wages that are paid to the workers in the vineyard in this story, or the $50 in my previous story, he's not talking about money, he's talking about time spent with God. And that God's favor is given to everybody. Gotta tell you what my study Bible said, because honestly, it puts this parable into so much perspective. It says, this parable is not about monetary rewards for working hard, but about God's favor given freely to all. It is a strong teaching about grace and God's generosity. Don't begrudge those who turn to God in the last moments of life, because in reality, no one deserves eternal life. We resent God's gracious acceptance of the despised, the outcast, the sinners who have turned to him for forgiveness. Have you ever been jealous of what God has given to another person? Don't compare your gifts, your experience, or your healing, or even the depth of your relationship with Jesus. Instead, focus on God's gracious benefits to you and be thankful for what you have. Baby, that perspective. I think study Bibles are so important because immediately when I read some of these things without understanding the context of the time, I think of life right now and me right now and how it would feel right now. And it's easy to get offended or upset. But when you actually look at a study Bible and look at the context of it all, it puts it into so much perspective. Have you ever been jealous of what God was doing in someone else's life? Have you ever looked at it like, I've been serving, I've been giving, God, and I see that you've been blessing this other person, but if you think about it, we want what God has for us. I don't want what God has for nobody else. I want what he has for me. I want to do what God is calling me to do in this moment, because my mission is not going to look like theirs and theirs ain't going to look like mine. Then in chapter 20, verse 17, Jesus starts talking about his resurrection that's coming. So he starts telling the disciples again, the third time, about his resurrection. Why is it so important in this context? Because Jesus lays down a framework and he talks about the religious leaders. They're going to persecute him. So he talks about this. It's important to keep in mind when you're looking at verse 20, but verse 20 is also really good. Verse 20, we have the mother of James and John, and she's a good mama. I ain't gonna lie. She's a good mama, but she does have some earthly perspective, even though she's walking with Jesus and loves God. Some people say that James and John's mom may actually be Mary's sister, which makes James and John his cousin, which is why she could have been asking this favor of Jesus. To be noted is this mother respects Jesus's ministry. She knows that he is the Messiah, and she is actually cited to be at his crucifixion, which some of the disciples left him at that point. But she was at the crucifixion of Jesus. She goes to Jesus and asks for this special favor, and she says, Jesus. And he said, what up, Gus? And she's like, listen, can you do me a favor? All I want, the only thing that I want is for James and John to be sitting at your left and your right. Jesus looks at them and says, listen, do you even know what that means? For one, you're going to have to drink from the cup that I drink from. You're going to have to go through what I'm going through, or similar to what I'm going through, in order to sit to the right or left of me. But even if you were to do all that, it is not up to me. It's up to the Father in heaven. That's him. He's going to be the one that's going to pick it. It goes further to explain to them that, and when I say them, I mean the mother, James, and John, and his disciples too, the importance of being a servant leader to God. And that if you want to sit at a throne, you have to first understand that the kingdom is different than the world. For the world, a leader is served by his servants. But in the kingdom of heaven, baby, the leader is a servant leader, just like Jesus is a servant for us. He died for us. How much more servitude can you get? Explains that in order to be a leader, you have to be a servant first. He explains that. Check out verse 26 through 28. For the mother of James and John, even though she was walking with Jesus, her perspective was a little bit off. Now, as a mother, we want the best for our children. We want them to have everything. We want them to be elevated in position, and elevated. But what we do have to be mindful of is, just like for us, we have to make sure that we are praying for God's will to be done in our lives. We have to do the same thing for our children. To be praying that God's will for them is done, not what we desire for them, but what God desires for them. As we move forward, there's so much more. This explains servant leadership and the importance of it. So even in our workplace, especially if you're a leader, our job is to literally seek to serve. You think about it, in my previous work experience, the best leaders that I've had have been servant leaders. What about you? Last but not least, we have the story of the two beggars who are blind. As they are leaving the town of Jericho, there are two beggars and they're screaming out to Jesus, Son of David. And I love when I hear Son of David, because it just puts so much into context from reading Matthew chapter 1. But they're saying, Jesus, Son of David, can you save us? They're so loud to the point where the crowd is telling them to be quiet. That's a hint for us. If you're seeking Jesus, baby, don't worry about what nobody else has to say. Don't worry about nobody telling you to stop, because just like these two blind people, they kept going. Even when people were telling them, you too loud, you doing too much. No, baby, keep on your message to seek Jesus. Jesus asked them, what do you want from me? And they said, we want to be able to see. Jesus healed them, and immediately they were able to see. And then you see, literally, they followed him. That puts so much into perspective for us, because there's a lot of things that that happen in our lives that we're like, God, can you just help me understand? God, can you just show me what I'm supposed to do? God, can you just lead me? Because right now I can't see. Giving up, even in the presence of background noise, some people following them, people being around them, they did not give up on seeking Jesus. And as a result, they were able to see exactly what they needed to. That's the message for all of us, to be honest. Things in your life that you need to understand, or even you want to develop the tool of discernment to be able to see through things and navigate things in life, continuously seek Jesus no matter what the background noise is telling you. Notice, after they were able to see, they immediately followed Jesus. What does that say for us? You've been in a season of your life where God did something for you. He healed you. He saved you. He protected you. And then you turned from him and went the opposite direction again. No, we need to have the mindset of these blind men, because these blind men, as soon as God healed them and showed them the way, they were able to see, and they kept following Jesus. Baby, don't give up. Keep following your Father. Important to note is Matthew was the only one who cited two people, two blind men. Luke and Mark only cited one, and it's noted that they only cited one because that one was the loudest. Don't be quiet about God. What did you get from 20? Let me know in the comments, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.